All right, so here we go. Welcome to this episode of Data Insight, where we are going to talk about all things mass modification, how to mass change, update, and just make all those changes inside of Salesforce that we need to do and to do it quickly. Thanks again for being here with us. This is being recorded. It will be sent to you at the end of the session. We will have Q&A at the end, so we'll probably have like 3 or 4 minutes to answer questions. So anything that you have or are curious about, please go ahead and put it into the Q&A box. You do not have to wait till the end. Type it in as it comes to you, and we'll take a look at that when we wrap up. And with me today, I have again the incomparable Alex Korpita. You saw him last time in Data Insight when he schooled us on how to dedupe our database, and he is bringing it back today to tell us more about mass modification and how to make it faster. So Alex, thank you for being here. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, Olivia. I've been chomping at the bit to get back on this with you since the last one. So you also know I'm very passionate about this topic. So I'm really excited for today.
Yeah, Alex is my most energetic coworker, so I love being able to present with him. We're sitting there waiting for the time to count down. We're like, we ready yet? We're going to start this? So it's good energy to have around.
Voted most energetic in high school.
Makes sense. Well, we're going to keep that energy going for the next 30 minutes, and hopefully you guys will enjoy what you're hearing, take away some good tips and tricks and insight into how to better manage your Salesforce data. We have a short agenda today. We're going to level set, talk about what is mass modification. That'll take all about 3 seconds. And then we're going to talk about common use cases. We'll show you the Salesforce tools that are available to you. And then we're going to show you ways to make it a little bit faster. So let's dive into the goods. All right, what is mass modification? And simply, it is the ability to update or change one or more field values on multiple records in one process. So you're getting a lot done with a little bit of effort. You're making big impact across multiple records instead of cherry picking through and making the changes manually, which I think is something we can all relate to and all have a need to do. I know as an admin, I do. Common use cases. I think there's a lot of use cases out there for mass modification or mass changing your data. These are the ones that we come across the most. So standardization, and this could just be you're implementing a new standard into your data, or maybe you're changing the standard that you have to coincide with another system you're bringing in to make sure that the reporting aligns properly. Record ownership maintenance. I'm sure none of us have, logged into LinkedIn lately and seen, hey, I'm switching jobs, or hey, I'm open to work. And so that landscape is changing frequently and quickly, and we have to keep up with that in our CRM. So managing that record ownership maintenance is imperative, especially in times like this when we're really focusing on retention, because if we don't manage that record ownership, those are the things that are going to slip through the cracks, the deals, the customers, the prospects who are not going to get nurtured and probably walk away. Next up is business process changes. So let's say maybe you create a new record type and you need to take a subset of your records and put them into that record type. We hear about this often, just having to do those bulk changes to affect a whole bunch of data. There's also kicking off a record triggered flow on existing records. So record triggered flows are great. They can trigger on creation, an update, or a deletion of a record. But the hard part is saying, okay, well, I created this flow and now I want to retroactively take it back to the data that's already there. How can I do that? And then, of course, data segmentation. So, we use our mass modification tools to get some information out of the system and maybe look at that title field and parse it out differently. And we're going to talk through this, this scenario in a minute. That's why I'm not giving too much detail, but if that's surprising to you that mass modification tools can help you with data segmentation, we're going to clear that up for you and show you how. All right. So true to Data Insight, I like to know who's out there, what you guys are going through, because we go through, we look at these polls and we try to get an understanding of what is actually happening in market. So how many times a month do you have to do mass changes to your data? And if you're thinking that these values here are a little bit wonky, over 20% hit the, sorry, I was just seeing the stuff come through, that hit 100% almost immediately. But it was hard for us to decide which values to give you guys, because we see customers who mass modify once a week. We see customers who mass modify 13 times a week. It just depends on the influx of your data. So this is another way to gauge too, like how much data do you have, movement do you have, data do you have coming in, just a general, I guess, flux of information.
Olivia, I'd be willing to bet after today's conversation, these numbers would change after seeing some of the potential capabilities of mass modification. It kind of redefines it.
Yeah. I probably should have worded this differently and said, how many times do you need to, not how many times are you actually doing it? Because those things might not be synonymous. You're right. So let's keep this interesting, Alex. What do you think your guess is? What do you, out of these options, who do you think came in highest?
Out of these options, well, I think back to my old high school testing. I always want to go with option C because I feel like that is the best bet. So I'm going to go with 11 to 20, Olivia.
All right, you were wrong, but that's okay. Hopefully answer C was correct more times in high school than it is here. But so interestingly, we have less than 5 at 39%. And I'm going to call you out as the people who probably need to, but aren't because you don't have the right tools. And then it's over 20 at 28%. And the other two are somewhere in the middle there. So we either have people doing it a lot or a little, which is kind of what we see anyway. So this tracks, I think, for my experience anyway, and what I encounter. So thank you guys for participating. I always like to see that information and share it back with you. Let's dive into what Salesforce tools you have available to you. So if you go out and do a Google search and say, how do I mass change records in Salesforce? Or what are my tools? What are the options? These are the things that you're going to get presented with most. I know because I just did it before this to make sure I wasn't missing anything, that nothing new had come on scene, and we all have to keep up to date, right? So the first thing on the list here is list views. And I don't actually look at list views as like an admin or a data stewarding kind of function. Sure, it can moonlight as such, but to me, that is much more of a end user tool so they can go in and make mass changes when they want to. The thing with list views is there are some limitations to them. So the records have to be of the same record type to mass modify them in that list view. Or you have to create individual mass quick actions to go with your list view to take the mass action that you want. So some setup work there, but it is possible. And then if we're talking about those record ownership changes, like we were a minute ago, they do offer you mass transfer records tool, which is just a mass reassignment tool. So again, some limitations with how the data can be split up, like the data you can query to move, and then also what sub-objects can be taken along with that parent object reassignment. Data import wizard and data loader, those fall into the same camp because these are the ones that are going to say, okay, if you want to make a change, if you want to mass modify a record type or standardize a particular field, you're going to extract the data, including its ID, make your modifications inside the spreadsheet, use your ID to then re-update back into Salesforce. And depending on how quickly that happens, there can be a lot of lag time. So maybe the data that you're updating was updated by somebody else before you processed your file. So the reason I'm pointing out the limitations here is not because I don't think Salesforce gives us good tool. I absolutely think they do. These are great jumping off points and great utilities to get you started. But that's why Salesforce has such a robust network of partners, is they can say, yes, we know what you need, that you're going to have to manage this stuff. You're going to have to mass change things, reassign records, all that stuff. Here's what to look for. And then they have their partners who really go out and hone in on their niche in the market. So not a knock on Salesforce, just want to let you guys know what you're up against here with the existing tools that you have. And it's funny to me when I see an import export data loader tool to be talked about as a mass modification tool, because I'm like, to me, I've been doing it so differently for the past 20 years. I can't imagine extracting data, changing it, pushing it back in. It seems archaic. So, but that being said, it is a good option should you not have any other. The other things that I want to point out here too, because you might be wondering, well, what about validation rules? Those help keep things standardized. And you're right. What you have to consider there is just the impact it's going to have on your end user's experience as they navigate through the system, right? Like if you have a salesperson and there's a newly required field and they're like, I don't have anything to put in there right now, you're just interrupting their flow a little bit, or if they don't know what the validation is looking for. So I'm a much bigger proponent of having an admin or a data steward take on that responsibility, say, I'm going to make sure that this data is in the state that it needs to be in. And then there was also, what was the other one? Oh, country and state pick lists. Those are great. You can implement those. Those help keep you standardized and, some good segmentation fields. So just wanted to give you, a preview into some of the things that Salesforce offers. So if you're not aware that you know where to go and start checking this stuff out, Alex, you had said something that when you were talking to your customers, what else are they doing? You said there was something else that they were writing. Was it SQL codes, queries?
They were wishing, they had a wish list for SQL level queries into Salesforce. Salesforce isn't the best at surfacing the data with the SQL query kind of logic. And at that time, I was specifically demonstrating what we're going to look at in a few minutes here. And they were just very in awe with what we were able to do in terms of if a record meets this criteria, then I want to perform X, Y, and Z to it. So that's what it was. They had a lack of SQL capabilities with Salesforce data.
Yeah, but of course they want to do it with that clicks not code and that declarative environment, right?
Yeah, it's not code. Fun to say.
We love that one here. It's a favorite of ours. Well, Alex, I'm going to pass it over to you because now we are going to take you through a day in the life of somebody with a huge list of a lot of mass manipulation of data that they have to do. So Alex is now going to show us how we do it on the demand tool side. We're going to go live inside the product just so you have an understanding of what is available to you out there in the market to use to make your life easier and to keep that sanity intact as we're all trying to navigate through these major changes. So Alex, what do you got for us?
Yeah, and Olivia, I'll ask that you keep me honest on time. I can get tunnel vision when we get into the product here. So
gotcha, we're good.
Keep me accountable. So what we're looking at here, we created a figurative to-do list specifically for a customer loyalty campaign. So there's a lot of ways to get this done. And really, when it comes to customer loyalty campaign, it's quite a common use case with mass modification tools. So we wanted to cover that for you guys today. So we're going to walk through what that would look like. Thing with mass modification, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, it kind of has a lot of definitions depending on who you are, what your experience is, what you've been exposed to, and what you can do with your data. So the reason we've chosen this option, it's specific to a customer loyalty campaign, but we're really showing this to get some gears turning, to show you the power of mass modification, how it can unlock certain pieces of your data that you didn't know you had the capability to do so. So with that in mind, let's walk through our figurative to-do list today. First thing that we're going to have to do is standardize our contact information for the direct mailers and outbound call cadences. We're going to key in on some specific fields. They're going to be really crucial for that outbound outreach. Names, email addresses, first names, phone numbers, etc. All of that comes into play. We're going to key in on a few of those. The next one is we are going to use some of our data to segment it, believe it or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to populate a new role field. It's a custom field that we're going to use to identify the contacts that we're actually going to be reaching out to. We're going to do that by isolating certain strings in the title field, specific in this case to upper management. The next thing that we're going to do is identify customer accounts with a certain amount of annual spend. And based on certain thresholds that we've defined as an organization, we're going to mark them as key accounts. Those are going to be the accounts that we reach out to for our customer loyalty campaign. From there, now that we've identified our key accounts and we have our roles that we're going to be reaching out to, we need to reassign them to the respective team members that are going to be reaching out. In this case, we're going to do it by market size, small market up to enterprise. We have reps for each of those. So we need to make sure that we reassign those accounts and the resulting contacts to those new reps. And then the last thing that we're going to do here, once this customer loyalty campaign is set, we want this to be a go forward process. So we actually created a new record triggered flow that really hones in on customer advocacy and that life cycle with us. So what we've done is we've set it so this record triggered flow will create an advocacy task on the account for the account owner once that opportunity is closed, if it meets our threshold. Now that's all good and well for a go forward. But we have opportunities that closed in the last 90 days, 180 days that would meet this threshold that we need to retroactively go back and apply the same flow to. I'll show you how we can use our mass modification tool to take this newly activated record triggered flow and set it on historical data. Sound good?
Sounds amazing. And
excited, Olivia?
I love this. I think that the thing that people are realizing right now is that mass modification is not just take it from value X and put it as value Y, because I guarantee you this is all stuff you need with a mass modification tool. So this is exciting. I'm going to give you the screen share.
Yeah, I've decided that that's going to be my Q2 mission, is reframe and redefine what mass modification is. I look at it as empowerment on your data. There's so much out there. If we can take advantage of it on a mass scale and use it, no, there's a lot that we can do. So let me go ahead and share my screen out here and we will get rocking. And Olivia, if you can just give me an audible, we've got your demand tools application.
You got your demand tools, Alex.
Amazing. All right. So that task list, I already forgot about it, just like I already forgot about what I ate for breakfast. So I did pull up a notepad here that we can follow along with. The first one that we're going to do is we're going to standardize our contact information for direct mailers and outbound call cadences. So that's going to start us in our modify module. And as the name implies, this is where we do mass modification. So I'm going to load up a scenario that I've already created that brings us directly to what's being done, our first task for contact standardization. Now, I want to call out a couple of things. This record selection criteria is really those SQL statements. It's your select option if you're familiar with SQL. If a record meets this, then I want to take action on it. In most cases of today's call, this is going to be arbitrary criteria. I have a very dirty demo database. It's my job to show people how I clean it all day, every day. So I have to use arbitrary ways to pull out a set of data that is actually, visible and aesthetically pleasing. So in that case, I just have a checkbox that's for my demo data. In some cases, it'll be a little bit more or less arbitrary. Right now, it's about as arbitrary as it gets. So moving on to step 2 here, this is going to be where we perform, in this case, contact standardization. So we're leveraging 3 fields on the contact object: the phone field, the first name field, and the mailing street field. We're going to be doing outbound sales cadences via sales automation. So we need to standardize those phone fields so that they can be ingested into that automation in the right format. The next thing we're going to do is email campaigns. And I don't know if you've ever been the part of an email campaign where they've captured your name in all caps. Maybe the person that entered it in was really excited or was yelling. That's not really the best customer experience. So we're going to do a simple proper case of that first name. So anything in all caps is going to be dropped to the proper case. Great for merge fields in emails or snail mails, direct mailers. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to standardize our mailing streets. So depending on how you're going to put out that direct mail, you're going to need USPS CAS certified addresses to be able to send to. So we actually have a formula directly for that is going to take all of your street values, regardless of how it's been entered. The apartment numbers in the front, if the street has been spelled out, if you use punctuation, abbreviation, special characters, we're going to put it into a proper format. So this is all using our formula function here. These are pre-built formulas, again, going on that click, not code kind of mantra, where you could, all you need to do is select the formula and drop the field that you want to change, and you're off to the races. So we'll click preview and I'll show you what one of these is going to look like on one of our line items here.
And now, Alex, can I just point out here to everyone, not to interrupt your flow, but what you're doing right now, this is going to be one of those things where you would have to extract the data, do those formulas in Excel, and re-upload it. And you have not left the Salesforce data center yet. You are remaining inside there. So I think that's pretty important to, have people understand that we are not exporting anything right now.
Yeah, all of this data is still in Salesforce. We're making the changes in Salesforce. It does not need to be exported. And it's 2023. Information security is probably the biggest buzzword behind ChatGPT these days. So the fact that that data is not getting sent to a cloud server, very important news to what we do. Now, we're seeing our preview grid here, which is going to show us our proposed changes. In the case of Mr. Johnny Appleseed here, which is going to be our guy for a little bit of time, you'll see that what we're doing is we're proper casing Johnny from all caps. You can see we have a very weird syntactically, I don't know if that's a word, but we're running with it, mailing street here, where the apartment number is in the front. We have directions to the street value spelt out. What we did is we fixed all of that. We abbreviated everything, dropped the apartment number to the back. And then for something like a phone number where maybe a sales rep was on the fly and they just typed in extension as a string, we're going to go ahead and put that to something that will be able to be ingested by a sales automation. So that's step 1, and just a small example of how we can do standardization. Let's jump back out of that. And the next thing that we need to do is we need to identify the key contacts that we will be sending direct mail to, that we will be email outreaching, cold calling, etc. We're going to do that by populating a role field using keywords in the title. So I'm going to go ahead and search my scenario list here, and we're going to pull up task number 2, which is for role tagging. So this is where the if-then statement gets a little bit more important. We're going to use the title field here and look for specific strings in the title. So we're going to be looking for upper management specifically. I'm isolating things like DIR, director, senior director, VP, EVP, SVP, so on and so forth. Now, Olivia, wouldn't it be great if we could actually just standardize these values in the title field?
Yes, please.
Yeah, that would be great. Certainly something that we would always advise, standardizing your formats. We're not going to do that today. We're just going to do an inclusive search for all of these different types of abbreviations, punctuations, etc. Now, once we find those records, we're going to go ahead and drop the upper management pick list value in the role level field. I'm going to be able to use this for my segmentation purposes, only include those in my sales campaigns, etc., so on and so forth. So we'll go ahead and click preview here, and I'll show you what that's going to look like on a smaller set of data. Here's all of our records with the appropriate title, and then here's our role level of upper management.
This is just such a great example of using your data to be smarter about your data, right? Pulling what your data is already telling you and putting it in a way that you can query it and load it up. And I just think that this is kind of a hidden use case for mass modifying data, is picking out what you have and then telling it what it should be, but somewhere, you know what I mean? And not messing with its original state.
Yeah.
Anyway, I keep messing up your flow. Sorry. I just think
and that's an important point. I was actually talking to a marketing manager the other day where I showed this capability, and they said one of their biggest headaches was sifting through their segmentation by having to figure out all of the creative ways that director could be put into a title field. Instead, you can just write it as, you can standardize it if you want to, or you can just write it in and create something like the upper management or the director level role that you can then reference for segmentation fields. And these can be hidden fields. These can be visible fields. You can use them for segmentation, however you see fit. Okay, cool. We've identified our contacts. Next thing that we got to do here is go ahead and identify our accounts that we're going to be sending these outbound campaigns to. So we're going to do that in task number 3, and we're going to calculate some annual revenue here. Arbitrary criteria, moving on to step 2. What we're going to do is one of my favorite functions of Modify. I think of this as really the best way to empower yourself with data points is going to be our field aggregate action. What we're going to do is we're going to roll up a value in a child object to the parent object so we can use it for better analytics and reporting. In this case, we're taking the account annual revenue field, and we're going to populate it with opportunity data, specifically the field of the amount field from the opportunity, and we're going to sum it up. So what this is going to tell us is the total open opportunity dollar amount on the account level. And I'm going to use that to identify my key accounts. Now you can condition the opportunities to look for certain types of opportunities, closed ops, cross-sell ops, new business ops, renewal ops, however you see fit, and then take that field and aggregate it. So we're going to go ahead and click preview, show you what that looks like.
And I think a lot of people inside of Salesforce now are using like roll-up summary fields and field aggregates where you have to actually dump this data into Salesforce. And in ours, you don't have to create another field. You can just do the roll-up summary and move along with your life. So I think just a level set for everybody, who's used to doing this in Salesforce, that's, what it would look like where you'd be working.
Right. Yeah. No need for a formula field in this case. So as you can see, we have our annual revenue populated, and we're good to go. Now we can use this annual revenue field, much like we did with the roles, to identify key accounts, which is going to be our next step, which is reassign. Actually, I'm skipping a step here. Actually, I forgot there's a 3.5 on my list here. Let's go ahead and take that annual revenue field that we have now populated, and we're going to look for any accounts that have annual revenue over 15,000. Which is going to be our classification for our key account field, which is just a checkbox field that we're going to mark to true. And again, we're going to use that for segmentation purposes. So to briefly show what that looks like. In the preview grid here, we already have some key accounts identified with that annual revenue, but for those that don't, we're going to go ahead and mark that to true. So to recap, we have our key accounts identified based on annual revenue spend that we used for a checkbox field. We have our roles identified by looking or isolating keywords within the title field to create an upper management role level that we're going to use for outreach. And we've standardized their contact information so that we have phone numbers, mailing addresses, and first names that are going to look great in merge fields. Now we need to get those guys out to the appropriate owners of the data. So that's going to bring in step 4 here. We're going to reassign those key accounts to the respective team members. Let's go ahead and jump into the scenario list here and pull out task 4. So this is not arbitrary criteria on the record selection. What we're going to use is that key account identifier to isolate those records. And in this specifically, since this is a loyalty campaign, we're also going to take the customer age. We're going to take a look at how long they've been with us. And in this case, if it's been over a year, then we're going to go ahead and include them in that campaign. Jump to the matching conditions here. And this is where it gets really cool. What we're going to do is we're going to reassign those records that meet that criteria based on additional criteria. In this case, we're using annual revenue spend, and we're classifying that by market size. So my small market is going to be 15 to 25,000. Mid-market is going to be 25 to 50,000. And then anything above enterprise is going to be 50,000. Now I can reassign those to one individual owner, or I can reassign those to multiple owners. So if you have a team that's responsible for your enterprise, you can easily provision all of them, assign them an even amount of records, and they can get off to the races. But in this case, Janelle's getting enterprise, Travis is getting mid-market, and Chris is going to get the small market. Now, the other thing that's important here is there's obviously some child records related to these accounts. In this case specifically, the contacts need to go as well. We're going to leave all opportunities with the previous owner. We could reassign them if we wanted to, but we would choose that here in the reassign options. You simply select the child object that you want to go. You can condition it only if the current owner owns it, or all records entirely. But in this case, we're going to send all contacts, irregardless of who owns it, to these new owners to carry out this campaign. And at that point, Olivia, we're pretty set. Outside of working within our external systems to send our marketing communications, outside of working within our sales automation to get the cadences up and our direct mailer, we have all of the data that we need in our Salesforce instance to perform this campaign, all made possible through mass modification.
And that was a lot of data gymnastics, and acrobatics is what I typically refer to it as, because there's no other way to describe what you just did. So we walked through that in 12 minutes. It didn't take us long. So I'm sure everybody's like, yeah, how long did it take you to set up those scenarios, Alex? Was it like a day and a half of work? And it wasn't, right? Like everything you just did could be accomplished in what, less than a day, 5 hours? What is it?
Yeah, well, mind you, I've been working in this solution for half a decade now. So my setup is going to be a little bit quicker than someone new off the street. Took me 20 minutes to get this set up. And to kind of bridge the learning curve here, again, we're working with SQL style select statements where you select your object that you want to work with. As you add in your conditions, your criteria is going to be SQL style operators, as you can see here, starts with, ends with, contains, etc. And then you just select your actions. Now you will have to familiarize yourself with some of the formulas here, but we do have a library on our help center that's available that spells out all of that. And even outside of that, there's even some more simpler things that you can do, like field-to-field value changes, which is as simple as taking a value in one field and placing it in another field, or specifying / hard coding a value into a record. So it's
field to field though. That's another one where it's like, we've had somebody recently come to us and say, oops, I messed up an import. I accidentally put like state in the wrong field. And all they had to do is go into here and say, okay, for these records created by this person on this day, take the state field out of this field and put the value in this field. And it was, they didn't have to delete all of it or reprocess a file. It was just a very easy flow for them to get in here and change this. So let's say you're a complete novice at this. I would say everything that you just did and showed us, assuming that you have, your flow prowess going in your own org, I would say no more than a day or two, right? Like you're brand new, you can't use any other tools. This is one you're going to use. So, you figure it out. And I think it's that quick when you talk about the time savings. And for me, that's the huge part. And just getting rid of that human error, right? You're sitting inside of the data. You're not moving it. And I think, Alex, we're friends because we geek out on the same stuff. That field aggregate, record count, all that stuff is amazing in my book. And yes, it is above and beyond the typical modify, but that's what we do here, right? We understand what our admins need and what makes it impossible for them to get through their day and what makes it possible to do that with sanity intact. So that's why we have things like this in here, because we know that change in ownership is probably coming off of some other thing that's happening that you have to account for and set up. And why not be able to do it all here in one interface? So was there anything else you wanted to show inside the tool? I keep interrupting your flow.
Well, absolutely. There's one other thing that we have to cover. So our campaign is ready to go. We have everything that we need, but remember, we built that flow that we need to come back to and apply to historical records. So let's go ahead and recover that or recap that. On number 5, we need to apply our newly created record triggered flow that auto creates an advocacy record for newly closed opportunities to a historical data set. So let's go ahead and take a brief look at that flow. I already have it pulled up. And in this case, it's very simple. It's just opportunities that have closed at an amount higher than 25,000. Now, this is all good and well for go forward, but we want to apply this to, let's call it opportunities that have closed in the past 90 days. Now, as a note, if you're chomping at the bit to use something, you will have to make sure that you're set to every time a record is updated and meets the condition requirements while you run this job. Once it's done, you can drop it back to the only when the record is updated. And what we're going to do if an opportunity meets this criteria is we're just going to drop a task on the account. It says reach out for introductions and advocacy, etc. All right, cool. So let's do that. I have an account here, Data Insights Worldwide, great account. And we have a recently closed opportunity called Data Insight Rules at 35,000, which is a qualifier. But because this was closed before the record triggered flow was activated, we don't have that advocacy record here. So we can very simply jump over to modify and use one of my favorite pieces here for flow, which is going to be task number 5 in a very simple build, which is just using the touch records. All that this is doing is updating the modified date on the record. So you don't have to push through an arbitrary change to get that last modified date to go. We're simply just going to update it to the current time. So this is going to live on that one record that meets the criteria. We're going to publish that change.
And again, if you were doing this with Salesforce tools, you would have to create a field to modify on there and then, push this through an import process or an update process, I should say. And with this, we've done nothing but query the records we're looking at, right?
Yeah, that's right. Just ran that query, updated the modified date. And as you can see, we now have that advocacy record here. So at a general level, while this worked for our customer loyalty example, this works for any flow that you created on a record triggered basis where you want to enact it historically on records that meet the criteria, but because it wasn't implemented then, you can run it back.
Absolutely. Well, I think this is great. I think we have some questions coming in, and Alex, you nailed it. We're right at 12:30, so we got our 5 minutes for Q&A. I had no doubt you would. We do have another resource for you. Let me figure out Zoom. Hang on. I gotta share my screen here. There we go. All right. So you get my desktop here, Alex?
Yep, we got it.
So I just want to make you guys aware, we have another resource for you. This is out on the Validity website under our resources. You can find it there. It's also linked to here that will be sent to you with the recording. And it just talks about 4 workflows that you should be automating in Salesforce, because if you're not automating, you're falling behind. So we want to keep that in mind. And now let's move on to our questions. Let's see here. The first one, I would love to use normalized US address. Oh, they're wondering if we have any plans to extend that outside for the UK or other region equivalents. And Alex, you may have, I don't have a roadmap on that. I do know that there have been conversations about the fact that outside of the US, and somebody's gonna have to keep me honest on this because I don't really address things outside of the US very often, but there's not a typical, like a normal standard that we can just implement the way it is with the USPS. So it's much easier in the US to do it. But definitely, if you have requests like this, our product team is all ears all the time. We have an idea exchange on our product, true to Salesforce community values and what we like to do and interact with you guys. So go out there and make your case, tell us about it. And we'd, love to talk to you about that. So nothing that I know of right now, but appreciate the feedback. Somebody was asking, Alex, this is for you, what other values do you have for role? Like upper management was there? And I think that it was just what we built in for this example, right?
Yeah, so that's a custom field that I've provisioned, but maybe for creative inspiration, I used executive team, upper management, and individual contributor. So those are the options that I chose. You can build that in however you see fit.
Cool. She says thank you as I'm looking at the chat here. So somebody had mentioned early on that they're very interested in record reassignment. And then they sort of shifted into saying, I do use the older demand tools version. So for people who've been around the block a long time with us, we have, the V release, which is the newer interface and newer functionality that we have in demand tools. And they were just wondering if there's anything that can be done easier with the old version versus a new version or what. And I will say that the one thing that we just showed last was that touch records, and that is much easier inside of V release. A lot of people are a little bit nervous to move over, and I don't think they should be. I think you're going to find that all that core functionality is there. It's just maybe in a different spot. So we were really right click heavy inside of the old demand tools. So 90s of us. And now we have more modals and things for you to access that just surface that information and those options to you a little bit more clearly. So, and we also have office hours. I think, Alex, is it monthly that we do this? So
bi-weekly.
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 Our services team is out there and they are waiting for people to come and say, how do I do this? Like if you're having a problem transitioning or if you just don't know what the right path is, ask us. So one example, again, for what V-release might do better. In old version, you had demand tools and people import separate products. Now people import functionality is rolled up into the import module of demand tools. So when you go to do an upsert, you can still compare against multiple objects in one process and create multiple objects in one process, but now it's extended out past leads, accounts, and contacts. So, and you've got the campaigning in there, you've got the tasks you can create to, follow those records as you put them into the system. So there's a lot that has been streamlined from 2.91 to V-release. But I had a customer reach out to me on Friday afternoon. They're like, I know it's possible, I just can't find it. And all they had to do was toggle the radio button to upsert. They were in update and like, oh, okay. So I think it's nuances like that that are tripping people up a little bit. But like I said, we are ready and here to help. And if you have questions, don't hesitate. We'd love to hear from you.
And Olivia, I also have to throw in probably the greatest thing since sliced bread that all of our legacy customers asked for that DTV has is the undo button. We have the ability to undo merges. We have the ability to undo modify jobs, which is mass impact in legacy demand tools. And then we also have an entirely new module called the assess module that gives you a record quality assessment of something that's really hard to assess, which is the health of your data.
This is why Alex is with me. He knows these things.
That's my job.
He picks up where I fall off. It's a great partnership we have here. So that is our time, guys. I want to be cognizant of it. We hit it right on the dot. I love that. I really like quick webinars. I hope you brought something back to the office today with you that you can use. There's another poll coming up here for you. And we'd love to, interact with you some more. Find us on LinkedIn. Like I said, we're big data geeks. So whatever questions you have, Alex and I would be happy to answer, as well as our service team. So thank you again for being here. We'll get that recording sent out to you, and you guys have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, everyone.